So I think people are getting some, they're taking a couple minutes from the other call and I'm sorry, not call, from the other session. And Paul, the way this is going to work is we do actually have a maximum of 9, not 10, like I was thinking, to have the session recorded. And so Paul has graciously offered to kind of slide on and slide off as necessary for the roundtable. What we're going to do is I'm going to have you guys go around and just kind of briefly, rather than me introducing each of you, I think it would probably be good for just you to say your name and say say the company that you work for, and maybe those quick questions that I had asked you, like how long you've been with EE. The intention today is that we're going to, I don't want to feel like, I don't want everybody to feel like they have to answer every question. And I will probably be calling on some of you to answer the questions. And so that you all don't start answering all at once, since we have a few, if you do really want to answer one of the questions that we ask, if you guys could just do this. I know that's kind of, but that I don't think they have like a hand raiser thing like Zoom does. Right, like exactly like what Michael's doing. So yeah, that's perfect. And let's see here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to ask some questions. We've taken some questions from the people, posted some into the roundtable, and of course, please feel free to ask questions in the chat. And we'd love this to be as interactive. The whole intention of this was to be as interactive as possible. So I think it's just, as everybody's been saying, the Expression Engine community is such a valuable asset to all of us that are in it. And I think all of our businesses have grown with it. And I'm really excited to have this participation and make these connections. So why don't we just go ahead and I'm going to have you guys introduce yourselves. Let's start with Ari.
Sure. Thank you, Lydia. Again, shout out to the organizers. I think just being able to organize the conference remotely and bringing the community together is awesome. So I'm Ari Banerjee. I'm the founder and CEO of Consumer 51. We are a prolific Expression Engine partner. I've been working with the Expression Engine for almost a decade now, and helped a lot of our clients go from the early versions to now we're looking forward to the launch of 6.0. Our team is about 21 people and growing. So glad to be part of this panel.
That's great. Eric?
Yeah, my name is Eric Regan, and I started a company called Focus Lab. We were probably using Expression Engine starting around 1.6.5, somewhere in there. And that was a huge part of what enabled us to start the business and no longer be freelancers. So Expression Engine is my home, if you will. I won't get into the full story, but interestingly, we don't actually offer development anymore. So we don't use Expression Engine or any other development tools for clients. But man, I've spent so many years in the EE community, have loved it so much, and now my focus is just running the business. So we have about 20 people.
Cool.
And
Caroline?
I'm Caroline Blaker. I founded a business called Petroglyph Creative in 2010, and we do high-value PHP CMS work with Expression Engine being a core offering.
Awesome. Michael?
Hello, I'm Michael Coon. I'm the managing partner of MC2. We're an agency with about 14 people. This is actually our 30th year as an agency. Been around for a minute. And I think we started using Expression Engine in some version of version 1 and have used it pretty consistently since then.
Awesome. Ben?
My name is Ben Fieri. I own a full-service marketing agency in Bozeman, Montana called Prime. Turns 10 years old in March, so pretty excited about that. Been using EE since probably about 2011. We got 10 people.
Awesome. And Greg.
So Greg Crabtree, a business consultant, CPA by training, but I found that I hated accounting. So I just hired other people to work with me that does accounting. So I get to play with the business aspect of things, of all things business. So I wrote a book, Simple Numbers, Straight Talk, Big Profits, back in 2011. The newest book, very innovative title, called Simple Numbers 2.0, the Rules for Smart Scaling, is really kind of our consulting philosophy that we've developed over the last 10 years from the original book. That really our passion is to help all of you guys that use these great tools to achieve phenomenal profitability and wealth building through technology enhanced labor. And so that's what our goal is.
Awesome. Paul.
Paul Larson. I'm with Creative Arc in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we're a 6-person design development agency. And we were founded in 2003. We've used EE since 2005. And I was pretty late to go to the conferences. I think I went to Detroit 4 or 5 years ago, and then have had the pleasure of being on the planning committee ever since for Denver and Nashville and Minnesota and this year. So glad to be here.
All right, and Ty.
Hi, I'm Ty Fujimura. I'm the CEO of Cantilever. We're a web design and development consultancy. We have 11 people distributed across the US and Canada. No one's in the same place. And I started personally with Expression Engine as a freelancer back in that 2010, 2011 era. Definitely EE1. I remember being super pumped for EE2. I credit EE with so much of my growth as a developer. And really as a business person, being able to start the agency, like Eric said, it was just such a pivotal tool. We could basically look at any website and figure out how to make it on Expression Engine. So that just unlocked a lot of possibilities with our clients. So we haven't been doing a ton of work with it lately, but we're always open. We always try to use the best tool for the job. And yeah, we build websites for clients from IBM to startups and local small businesses.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and open. I don't know if Eric, I doubt you even know that this helped me, but this is kind of a lead into the next question. When everything started slowing down in March and PPP was out, something as simple as Eric posting his experience on Twitter helped me so much as a fellow business owner. And that's another thing that I got from being part of this community. And so thank you for that. I'm going to lead this off with and I think this is probably something that is on a lot of people's mind. What's the most difficult challenge you faced this year, and how did you deal with it? So if you don't mind, Eric, I'm going to put you on the spot for that.
Wow. All right. The most difficult challenge. I think for me, it was in acknowledging that we were having an economic impact to all things COVID, and trying to determine the best and most effective way to communicate that to a staff. I have a visibility that a lot of our team doesn't always have, and I wanted to make sure that as many questions as possible had answers. So a simple question, the first one that came to mind for me was, I imagine that a lot of people at Focus Lab, even if things feel good, they might be wondering, is my job safe? So I started there and just kind of walking through, acknowledging the different things going on around us in the world, in our country. Even if things feel good at Focus Lab, I bet they've probably got some questions. So deciding how am I going to approach communicating to the team clearly, and then also what kind of plan am I going to have if things really slow down and get difficult. So I think personally, I actually was really excited to do that. That's the type of work that really gets me excited, passionate about creating a really good environment to work at. So I really enjoyed the work, but it was difficult to really think through the different stages we might go through and what we would do and when, and then how to communicate that to a team of people who might be uncertain about the kind of safety of their job. So what now we actually have a system that we use, that we will be using, not just in kind of this COVID context, but other contexts as well, where we have questions already answered for the what ifs. So that might be more confusing than it is helpful, because I'm struggling to describe it without getting too detailed, because that would be pretty boring. But I think that's where my head goes. When you ask
Awesome,
the question.
thanks. And Michael, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same things that Eric was, it's like, it was weird. We had really kind of clear plans for 2020, and, all of those got thrown out the window. And we all kind of went through those first couple of weeks of not thinking that it was more shorter term than maybe that it's ended up being. So it was like, how can we build a bridge? And we tried to do everything we could as an agency to keep everybody working as long as we could and keep people busy on internal projects. And then you deal with those struggles of how long of a bridge do you have to build, like what's the slowdown going to look like? How long is it going to last? And we're in this season now too of this is so much uncertainty as a business owner, and trying to balance that obligation between, your responsibility to the organization to ensure that it still exists when we come out of whatever, however long this is, for a place for people to work, and then managing the expectations of the team and developing that plan and strategy for moving forward. So I don't think the challenges are over for us. I'm hopeful that, things are going to continue to improve. We're on the West Coast, and it seemed like for us with what was going on in our particular state that, we were really slow, and then like May, early June, things were seemed like normal, and things were happening, a lot of new work and things coming in, people moving their projects forward. And then late Q3, early Q4, it just went flatlined on us as regards to the amount of phone calls or things that were happening, or people were stalling their projects. And that seems to be trending back up with people inquiring, and we're, the amount of proposals we have in the top of our funnel right now is really encouraging. And just trying to be wise, just trying to be a good steward of the resources we have, and to continue to move forward so that when this is over, I think those of us who worked hard to be prepared for what that plan looks like afterwards, there'll be a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thanks for that. Anyone else want to weigh in on that question?
Hair salons not being open was a big deal for me, but other than that.
Well, I will say this. I mean, one of the things that we did is, I have access to a lot of unique data. Our practice is national, so we got all different kinds of businesses. And so, Eric, your point was very well in terms of there's not a lot of good information. And so one of the things that, if you think about it, the government who talks about statistical information has absolutely zero of your data of what's happened this year. They're blind. And one of the things that's happened is we've monitored privately held businesses, which is our focus of our marketplace, is that, we think private businesses have taken over the dominant place in the economy. Public companies have actually started decline in total numbers. And so there should be, if you look back at 10 years ago at GDP in the public markets, there should be twice as many public companies as there are today as there are. And so the issue for that is you can now get liquidity without going public. That said, so we started monitoring data. So we've got a 100-company model that we track. We've got, it's about $1 billion of revenue, which is a pretty good data set. And so what we found is the economy for these privately held businesses all across the U.S., all different industries, was growing year over year at about 8% coming into March. As soon as March hit, it was about slightly up about 1 or 2%. March of 20 over 19. April was down 25%. May was down 10%. June was back up slightly above 2019 levels. And we've seen it kind of sit there, now as we're kind of waiting to see vaccine, election, all of those things. What's really fascinating, though, is I am stunned at the cash sitting on businesses' balance sheets right now. This 100 company model had $56 million of cash at March. PPP, right before PPP hit, we saw accounts receivable spike up. We saw accounts payable spike up significantly because everybody went into hoarding mode. As soon as PPP hit, AR and AP went back to normal and we started trading again. These same companies who had $56 million in cash in March have $86 million of cash on their balance sheet in June. So what we are sitting on is a powder keg of demand ready to say go. There's plenty of cash, there's plenty of demand, but we're looking at the wreck on the side of the road for the next 30 days.
Interesting.
And I'm telling you, I mean, this is not a recession, it's a restriction.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, Greg.
Yeah. And so, I mean, and like I said, I got enough data points that I'm looking at real information, because one of the things, we have one way of looking at data, and it allows us to aggregate that data in a statistical study model. And I'm telling you, I mean, yeah, if you're the airlines and if you're in corporate hospitality, okay, yeah, you got some issues. But I'm telling you, yeah, I mean, and so here's the thing that matters in your industry. You know what we saw in marketing? One of the key lines that we focus on in our model is marketing spend. So you know what happened in marketing spend in April from March? It got cut in half. It came back 25% of the way in May, and it came back just a little bit away. So by June, it wasn't back to normal. But you know what? We've talked to every client and what they're getting ready to do over the last 3 months that we've been having calls. Marketing spend. They're getting ready. And you know, and they're sharpening their plans of saying, what is our message? What are we going to go do? And we're going to release the beast. And now here's the last thing I'll tell you. Profitability of that basket of companies was 8% in March. Profitability was over 10% in June. These companies shed unproductive cost, unproductive labor, right sizing, and now they're geared to run. So
yeah,
that's my
That's
call.
great. That is great. I think that's actually kind of a good segue into a next question, which is, where do you guys get new business? What works for you? Where do you find that? And Caroline, I'm going to put you on the spot since you just sort of talked about this a little bit.
Totally. I expected that.
So yeah, what works for you?
Well, we're small, so it's easy for us to fill up, and that's where we are, and still things just show up. I think people choose us as the kind of message. I mean, I'm a very specific user of words. I like words. I'm very active in my language selection, and I think when it acts as a sort of filter for our marketing material when clients approach us, and we don't know they're there on the website looking. They might like it, they might not, but the folks that like it really like it. Jerry Garcia once said, not everybody likes licorice, but the folks that like licorice really like licorice. And so we're trying to sort of, well, we're not trying, it just sort of happened. People see us, they like us, they want to go with us. I'm worried about having enough capacity.
All right. What about Paul? What about you? How do you get new business?
So we have a lot from search engine optimization, but a lot of that's like somewhat historic, I think. And by that, I mean, with some of the things you'd search for with Minneapolis Web Design, I did far more work on that 15 years ago than I do now. So ironically, we get most business outside of Minnesota. One of our initiatives is like, how do we get Minnesotans to like want to do business with us? But yeah, I think a lot of AdWords or just referral. I wish, I don't feel as in control of it as I used to back in the day when SEO was more of a Wild West. But now it just seems like everyone's good at it, so it's almost noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, Paul, just remember, when you leave town, you're an expert. So,
Ari, how about you?
Yeah, it's for us. It's been a lot of referrals as well. Just clients who work with us and like the work, and just asking them if they know other people who might benefit from the work that we're. We also have fair amount of organic, as similar to what Paul said. I think organic traffic to the website that we haven't really done a lot by design recently, but having just the reputation in New Mexico that we have, our New Mexico office there, it comes from those channels. So just satisfied clients, I would say, is probably the number one source of business.
Okay, cool. I actually kind of have a follow-up question for Ari. But do you anybody else want to chime in on where they get? I know some of you guys probably have very different methods of getting new business than others. Anybody else want to chime in on that before I move on?
The best way to get new business is to be in business. It's really hard to start, but once you're there, it's like,
That's
okay,
right.
I'm not sure I can do all this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Well, so we get the business, and then everybody, just like what Caroline was saying, you get enough business and suddenly you're full. So the next big challenge, I think, that we all face is, where do we find people to hire? Where are they? How do you find, that like diamond in the rough developer that you've been looking for? And so that one, actually, Ari, I'm gonna throw that one back to you again.
Sure. Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. And I think within the Expression Engine community, I think we all know that, we're hurting for talent, right? There is so much work out there and, not enough talent. So a lot of times it is looking at people who might have the front end skills that we can say, we'll teach you this platform, we'll teach you how to do this, as long as you have the sense of aesthetics and design and, design fidelity. Different methods. We've done advertising through LinkedIn. We've gone through recruiters and tried different things. I can't say if like one method is better than the other. I think the most reliable way is when you again through referrals. Same way, just like clients, is if you have a team member who is already part of the team, knows the culture, can say, hey, I know somebody who's really great and they would do a good job and I can vouch for this person. That feels the best tried and tested method for us to bring talent. And we've had some really amazing new people join our team through that word of mouth referral from other team members.
That's great.
I'm curious if others know of any other sources for hiring.
Michael, did you have anything to add for that? Did you say? For the hiring?
We hope and pray. We're an agency, so our desk staff's pretty small but mighty. We've really worked hard to find the best people in our area to work on our team, and super proud with the capabilities that they have. But it is hard to find those people who have the right kind of technical skills and the right cultural fit. That's always the challenge. I think it's in some ways feels a little easier with COVID and remote work because we were all in the same office, being able to kind of cast a wider net and not have to convince somebody to move.
Mm-hmm.
They can stay where they're at. So.
Ty, how about you? I mean, it sounds like you might have had to go to Canada to find some people.
Yeah, exactly. Imagine that. Stooping so low. So Caroline just said EEConf in the chat, and I think that's a big basis for our approach is just meeting people, being out there, getting to know people. There are many folks, lovely folks in here who I've worked with in the past through this community and others that we've been involved in. The one kind of tactic that's been working out well for us lately has been LinkedIn Recruiter. And we've never put a job post up, but you can do some really intense targeting around specific levels of experience or job titles, or you can even say like, I want somebody who worked at one of these 10 companies in the past. and it's super, super powerful. So that's the first step. Is if you use LinkedIn Recruiter, you can put together a decent list of candidates. But the second part is writing a really good message that people will not ignore. And I've found that the less time I spend on that, it decreases the effectiveness dramatically. So if I really dig in, find out, research a lot of people. So I'm trying to message, 5 people for a role or 10 people instead of trying to message 100 people on a list. It makes a huge difference, and people really respect and appreciate that outreach. And they might consider even like talking to you, even though they're not necessarily looking for a job. So I recommend that approach too.
Paul.
Not a really complicated answer, but I have 5 developers that have gone to an EE conference and use EE that were not hired as EE developers. So it's easy to find, easy relatively to find PHP developers, people that have CMS experience. And I found that just don't make platforms a big deal when you're job searching. And then chances are they might like EE or other platforms that you use, even if they didn't use them before.
That's really smart.
Caroline.
Speaking of platforms and PHP, I came from WordPress, and I think more than one of us has that in common. And people are still finding the limitations of WordPress and where it's frustrating and wondering if something's better. And I think we could always speak to that in direct and brief messaging in multiple places as employers and as community people around the CMS.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a follow-up.
Go ahead and.
For Paul.
Oh, go ahead, Ari. Go ahead.
I just had a follow-up for Paul. I'm just curious, Paul. Like when you hire someone who didn't have the sort of the experience with EE, like what's the ramp-up time frame like?
I think all of them would have some CMS experience, or like quite a bit. One came from, I think, a state college consortium where they had some custom platform that, maybe powered 20 state colleges or something like that. So I found it pretty quick, and I probably had very poor ramp-ups. I think it was more like, here's a church site or here's a nonprofit, like just start working on it. So like, for sure, it was trial by fire. It was not ease in at all.
Yeah.
I think it would also be safe to say that, all of us that are looking to hire EE developers were really thrilled to see the workshops on learning EE sell out or get filled up. And there's also a lot of talk of offering some more of those, soon after this. So I hope I didn't speak out of turn there. So anyways, does anybody else have anything to add on that before we move on to the next thing? Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah. If I can squeeze one quick thing in, a different, just a different way to look at this, which has been helpful for us, is not so much how to go and find, but how to attract. And so rather than going out and finding 100 people, how can I get those 100 people to come this direction? And so one thing that's been really helpful for us is to simply talk a lot in places people can hear us or see us. And as I'm thinking and listening to some of the thoughts here, I can't help but connect this, and this is going to sound kind of strange, kind of connect it to dating advice that I've heard in the past. If you're looking for somebody that you want to be like a good match for, you want to, it's a weird phrase, I gotta make sure I get it right. You want to become the person that the person looking for is looking for. So I want Focus Lab to become the company that I want an amazing person to look for. And so that's another aspect of
that's really awesome. So I think one of the things that I've heard mentioned so far in a lot of your responses is the remote work. A lot more people are building remote, or they're building remote teams. So I think there's a lot of challenges around that, and I'm sure there's a lot more thought being put into how to keep your teams productive, how to build culture remotely. And so I think some of you guys have been remote, always, and some of you may have transitioned, actually our company was remote, then we weren't, and now we're remote again. And so I really want to pick your brains on what we can do to build culture and stay productive remotely. And so Eric, I'm actually going to toss that right back to you first.
Wow. All right. We have been somewhat remote since day one, or almost day one, but recently we are fully remote. And really, I think that the culture that we're talking about in this question is typically one that is, what's the shared experience of a group working together? And when you're seldom in the same place or never in the same place, you have to find ways and create ways to build trust. And trust is kind of at the bottom of any culture, either the lack of trust or the presence of it. So we try to do things that work-based meetings, and we have a very active and engaging Slack group for our team. But we don't just want to talk all day. So we have quite a few meetings, and then we intentionally try to build in time that are not, it's not meeting time, it's just kind of like chill time. So an easy example of that is every Friday, most of us are either in Eastern or Central time. And so every Friday around 4 p.m., we have what we call Friday Cheers. And we just kind of get together with no agenda. It's sort of like bring a drink if you want and enjoy the beginning of a weekend. And it's just being able to spend time together like that, where you're not trying to accomplish something, you're not trying to collaborate, you're just kind of hanging out. And then the only other thing I'll squeeze in is we try to be very intentional about giving each other props and high fives, both in a video form and also in text form, and sharing and laughter together. And those things are sometimes not natural if you're in a really tough season, but they're so valuable. And so we try to lead by example and laughing with one another, giving each other props for different things that we've seen one another do. And
that's great.
Those things have been really, really valuable.
And Ty, I'm going to call on you for this one as well, since you had a presentation earlier today too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, on the point of building culture, it's definitely, in my opinion, the biggest challenge. It's something that we've definitely struggled with, but we haven't always felt it as much as some other companies have, because we never really built much of a physical space. We started in New York, in Midtown New York, Midtown Manhattan, and at most we had like 3 people in there. So as the company has grown, it's all been remote, and we've had people both the US and Canada, and also Europe and Jamaica and Australia. So over time, we've had to really test our methodology there. And on a sort of cultural tip, I think what Eric said is spot on. You have to spend time that's not work. Otherwise, people just can't get to know each other the same way as they do in person. In an in-person setting, people naturally, they're in the elevator, they're getting lunch, they're getting going out for a drink, going out for coffee. There's this sort of ambient understanding and cadence and sync with each other that's very hard to replicate. So you have to force that to be replaced. So one ritual we have is our weekly meeting, which is 30 minutes, no work. And usually for some reason that we end up talking about like death and, horrible things instead, but it binds us, so I guess we're all just a little morose. And one thing I mention a lot with our team is in communication to over emote, because in remote communication, like even in video, it's much harder for people to get a sense of your genuine bonhomie towards them. And it's harder to develop those connections. But when you go to text, I mean, oh my God, you get a bug report from someone and someone just says like, yeah, on it. That could be, yeah, on it. Or that could be, yeah, screw you. I don't even like working with you. And that's the kind of like range of text communication, you know, so you have to be really deliberate about like, you know, putting those emojis in and all this stuff, or like animated GIFs. Animated GIFs are the best because they just communicate a sense of like casualness about the work and the kind of spirit of the work that we're interested in. So I harp on that a lot. And yeah, I think in regard to like productivity briefly, being remote forces you to utilize models that are different for approaching your work. So I think just being very intentional about that and understanding that a lot of the time remote work is going to be asynchronous, which means you need to be writing more and have more clarity around what needs to be done and when. You have to find the right cadence of kind of sync meetings that you need because you're not in person. You can't see what someone else is doing. You might need to have that knowledge. And then also when it comes to training juniors, junior people often gain a lot from an in-person setting because they learn by osmosis. They see people who are more senior in meetings and on phone calls and doing their work and going about their day, and they kind of get trained in some sense ambiently that way. But in a remote setting, you have a junior sitting in front of a laptop with nothing to do, and that is really alienating. So it's just about being very thoughtful and deliberate about it and approaching it from the ground up, saying, what do we need as a company? And really targeting that specifically and not just like hoping that it happens.
No, that makes sense. Does anybody have anything else to add before I move on? Michael.
I think both Eric and Ty, that was really great stuff. I mean, and we're doing a lot of those things. I laugh sometimes. You look at our Slack channel and the non-work related things. Sometimes, I just spent an hour in this GIF exchange between people, right? You get a little caught up in it, but it's fun. The one part I would add that has been actually a challenge for me just because of the way that I'm wired, and thankfully we have a really great kind of HR operations guy on our team that's super good at this, is that we were never remote until COVID. We were all in the office. So culture gets built very differently, like Ty alluded to. You have those little micro moments by the water cooler passing. You get a sense of what people are feeling and how things are going. And you can see something that's going on and take a quick little time out and do some connecting and some work going on. But is the need to communicate way more than you think you need to communicate when you're in that remote context with people. Like I started just doing a weekly Loom video in the middle of the week. We do a Monday team meeting and we meet with core leaders, but in the middle of the week, trying to have a cadence of just doing hey, this is what's going on. Just the things that I might be saying to them through the course of the week that that little video, can be encouraging and helpful to people. But I think that's been one of the biggest challenges for us culturally, is just maintaining the culture and the connection with people, being completely in the office to going completely remote. And then everybody has those different influences that are going on at home. We sent parents home to be with their kids now, and that's their coworkers now are their kids. It's a whole nother environment that as a leader that needs to be managed culturally. And so it's got its own set of challenges.
So I kind of have a follow-up, a related question that somebody posted into the forum, which is, now we do have Slack, we do have email, we have, people can text us, and that's all great for building company culture, but also sometimes our clients also have access to that. And, now with all the instant communication and the current state of COVID and working, how do you guys keep boundaries with your clients to avoid burnout for you and your team? Anybody want to start off with that? Caroline.
I have not actively managed this, and I need to. So please suggest some nice things, everybody.
I love that, Caroline. I think part of this is not just like people that have the answers. It's like if we're all seeing the same problems, I think that, we can put our minds together. Or maybe somebody else, and somebody who's, in the chat, please pipe up. If you want to come on, we can bring you on here as well. So
we get a lot of look. I'm sorry. We get a lot of looks at this, obviously, because across a lot of different businesses. And so actually, one of the things that we learned a lot from one of our clients is an expert in agile development processes. And so we've actually studied a good bit of how to take agile processes and put them into business processes. And so one of the things that our consulting team has adopted that is totally broken free from the professional services mindset is the idea we work off of a calendaring approach. So I am free from a to-do list. I do not have a to-do list. I have a calendar. Everything that I know I'm supposed to do is on my calendar. Now I have a really good executive assistant that manages that, and she actually manages, she's our consulting team coordinator, and so she manages all of our calendars. And I'm telling you, it's the freeing thing, because Caroline, it's the thing that allows you to put boundaries. So if I want a boundary of personal time, I put it on my calendar, and otherwise it's free for the coordinator. And we actually think that one of the biggest trends that we see in organizational productivity is not hiring the next C of something or the next VP of something. It's actually this mid-level coordinator who doesn't even have to have any technical skills in the area that you're working in, but they are, essentially, it's very much like the Scrum Master in an agile, development world. And I'm telling you, it is a powerful tool of organizational productivity, and it's a freeing thing personally, because like I said, I'm not worried about, I say, what do I have to do today? I only have to pull up my phone or pull up my Outlook calendar.
Is this person in your office, or are they remote?
She's both. She's sometimes here and sometimes remote. It's not, I mean, and before she did it, I actually had a virtual executive assistant through a company called Priority VA, who, if you ever look for a virtual executive assistant, Priority VA is an incredible process of selection and matching. Much like Eric, your point of dating, so it's like they have a very good profile of matching that executive assistant, to you. And so I highly recommend them if you're looking for that less than full-time person. Yeah.
I think this is something that we don't actually struggle with a whole lot. And I think it's a lot about managing expectations. I think that's a big part of it, right? The thing about us and how we are structured is we're not really a project-based company anymore. We're like an annual to multi-year retainer contract kind of stuff anymore. And so the client knows what we're going to be doing 3 months ahead at all times. So that makes it really easy to like not have that problem where like they know what you're going to be doing for a long period of time, and not. We do have some clients that will ping us with like emergency stuff that happens, but we also charge for that, so it's not a huge issue. But I think as long as and like we use Asana for project management, I couldn't imagine having a client inside our Asana. That would be absolutely awful. And so like I wouldn't let your clients in your company Slack channel. I wouldn't let your clients in your project management. Like that's just a recipe for the world to fall apart. Like the clients that I communicate in Slack, we have our own Slack for just them. So that's the way we do that. I would never mix those things together.
I have a client that started texting me on the weekends and I needed to stop. Can you help?
Fire that person.
Okay.
I know that's hard to, I know it's not a great, but like you either say don't do that or fire them. You have to. Like you just have to.
I'm going to tell them to stop, but I wanted to hear it from somebody else first.
Yeah, it's a tough, and I mean that's easy thing to say, and I get that. I do get that, but man, it's
hard to tell your client to stop doing something, no matter what it is.
Yeah, absolutely, I get it.
Thank you.
Yeah, Caroline, that's a great example. I think people learn what clients naturally should push the limits, and you're probably a client of other firms, and I'm guessing that we all do this to some degree, whether it's consciously or not. We ask for it a little bit faster, a little bit better, a little bit different, and if that person never puts up a boundary around what they're going to do, like that's how scope creep comes about, right? Which is like the classic bane of all service companies. It's because clients are naturally going to ask for more, and so if we don't put up that wall, then that will be breached. But
I put up so many walls around her, but she like first, I'm like, you can't do that. You can't have it 16 pages with the same content. You have to do stuff to make sure that's not the way it is. Yeah, and, I have those discussions with her all the time, but then she's like, my homepage is down. It's like Sunday morning. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I get that. Yeah. And I think if you're at that point where you've talked to them about these things and they're not respecting your boundaries, then like Ben said, and like Angie's saying in the chat, that's not a good fit.
I need to address it directly.
Yeah. But one other thing I wanted to mention is just like sometimes people just do it because they're not thinking about it or because they're like, maybe they'll get back to me. And so,
yeah, or they're like offloading the thought, like your process.
Totally, exactly.
Yeah.
So what I'll tend to do in those situations is just ignore it. And so if I never respond over the weekend, people tend to not text or, so it's amazing how much less email you get when you send less email and those kinds of things. So it's like, if you're not doing it, it starts to create a dynamic that's maybe more what you're looking for, at least in my experience. But I'm dealing with the same stuff all the time. So I definitely empathize with what you're saying.
There's also a correlation to people being a pain in the ass and also being cheap.
That's the thing, though. She's like pays everything, pays it all.
That's good.
And then it's why it's one of those really interesting, and tons of boundaries, just not in this one. It's just one of those really weird things. Anyway, thanks for addressing it.
There's actually a concept. So what everybody struggles with is this idea that none of those actions in and of themselves really constitute making it worthy to fire them. The question is the sum of the actions make it worth letting them go as a customer? And so there's a great company that we use as a perfect example of how to run a world-class business. And you'll think this is weird, but this is a 29-store fast food chain in Kingsport, Tennessee called Powell's Sudden Service. And if you really want the two of the best days of your business education, there's a guy, David McClaskey, was the consultant who helped them achieve the Malcolm Baldrige Award for Service and Quality. We recommend, it's now called McClaskey Business Excellence Institute, but it's really based on this idea. They have this thing for their employees, and they call it basically it's your commitments, as an employee, and it's a 4-strike rule. And any one of these things that if you have 4 strikes in a 6-month period of time, you can't work there. It's no drama. It's like, well, okay, it didn't work out. Now, but the thing is when you have this level of commitments and everybody understands, hey, you can't call me on the weekend when it's not a critical emergency, or you can't treat my staff members as your employees when they're really professional team members. You name whatever list of these are they call it conditions of employment. We've actually been working on a list of conditions of engagement, with customers. And
nice.
And we all, when you're in a service industry, people will latch onto you and suck the very living life out of you. And I agree with Ben. I mean, most of the time, the people who overuse you are cheap, and they're not good profitable customers. So we recommend finding a way to look at profitability by client. But in that sense, you've also got to protect your team you've got good team members that want to serve people, and you got to protect them from themselves sometimes. And you got to have a methodology of knowing where do you cross that line. And the challenge is when they abuse you with profanity and those kind of things, that's easy to fire those people. But it's the accumulation of non-fireable offenses is what you've got to come up with a process to understand.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the number you need to get to make that?
Greg, you're fabulous. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, it's not my idea. I have to give Powell's credit for that one.
Okay, I want to shift gears, and I know we're kind of coming up to, I think, the end of what we were scheduled for, but we have so many fantastic questions, and I also wanted to get some more audience participation. But I'm going to do a couple more questions, and then we can see how we feel. I want to be respectful of your time, so you don't have to stay longer, but we don't have a hard cutoff either. So here's we're going to shift gears with this one. How do you guys all feel about taking on business debt or debt cycles to run your business faster or scale at a quicker pace for a certain time period? Anybody have thoughts on that?
Never done
Have
it.
you done it?
No, don't do it.
Ty, you raised your hand.
I can share my perspective.
Okay. Yeah, please go ahead, Ari. Go ahead.
I was gonna. I can share my perspective. So I have taken debt to expand the business. We went in through we had acquired a couple of companies along the way. So I think using debt for acquisition could be a good way to expand. Having gone through these acquisitions over the last 3 years, we're kind of nearing the point where you have a 3 or 4 year payoff period where you could pay down the debt, and then whatever you were paying for debt, that becomes available now to do other things that the team wants to do. So I would say from that debt perspective, that debt allowed us to grow. If it hadn't been for the different acquisitions that we had over the last 3 years, if all those companies had been separate, COVID would have been a very difficult time. So from that perspective, I feel like, it's like anything else. If you take on, a car loan because you need to commute or whatever, as long as it's a responsible way of taking on the debt, I feel like, it's something that is a good way to expand the business. So that's my experience with debt.
Lydia, you talked about this yesterday. You guys just did something in this space. What's your experience?
Oh, we learned a lot. This actually was not my question, but yeah, no, I would agree with Ari that I think it can justify it, and I think right now money's cheap. I think for the environment for right now, and we did it strategically for a few different reasons to solve actually some of these other things that we were talking about, like we bought a book of business, we have resources, and so it's building our team, but yeah, I mean, part of me, we had been in business for 20 years prior to doing that, and we had never taken on any debt up until that point. It was totally bootstrapped, and it was so it was a leap. And we have a whole bunch of notes about what we would do differently next time. And so maybe I'll bug you, Ari, before we do it again. Compare notes again.
I know I chimed in right at the beginning and said don't do it, but I really think it needs to be a very calculated case by case. You need to have a clear plan. I watch companies go into debt without really any leadership strategy or any business strategy of what they're going to do with that money, and then they just spend it. And they don't put themselves in a position to use it as leverage to grow. And so it really does depend on the organization, depends on the leadership's discipline to move things forward. There's a lot of factors to consider before you just, getting a loan is not the secret to your success as a business owner. It is all the plans and strategies behind running your business that make you successful. So if you can't be successful with the little bit of money you have, when you get more, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, everyone, Greg wants you to chime in on this.
I did write 2 books on this subject. Here's the deal. Debt in and of itself is just a tool. And so I echo what Michael just said, is the idea is what I've searched for all of my career is to give you guys a framework of how to address these decisions. And so the new book really is focused on this concept of return on invested capital. And so the idea is, what is the capital requirement of the thing you're intending to do to grow the business? Because Lydia, when you spent the money, forget that you used debt to go get the money. You chose to spend money presently that you didn't have to spend to do what you're currently doing. You spent the money to do what you wanted to do in the next period. That is what we call launch capital. It's an expense in your P&L, but it's not needed to run your business. All of you people will grow your business with the exception of acquisitions, but if you grow your business organically, you do not grow it by balance sheet investments. You grow it by launch capital investments of expenses on your P&L in marketing and hiring labor before it's fully utilized. And so what we teach is a concept of how do you extract that and keep that investment over here and then hold it accountable. And I showed in my session, I did a thing of where a client of ours grew from 700,000 to 10 million in 5 years using marketing spend as their catalytic spend. But they did it with zero debt. Now, I will tell you, the easiest way to surely grow your business is you get profitable with what you got. You go on a distribution diet and you leave every dollar of profit back in the business until you reinvest it to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. I did this session with a mastermind group for IT managed service providers yesterday where I created a model that showed them, here is the value of your business organically growing from marketing spend and successful acquisition of new clients versus here is the value that you create through an acquisition. Guess which one actually produced more value? Successful marketing, not the acquisition. Now, the thing is, some companies who suck at marketing have to grow by acquisition because they suck at marketing. It just is. And so it's valid, but I'm telling you, right now, it's just not easy to go snag that good deal as an acquisition. I'm not against acquisitions, and if you find one, you need to look really hard at it because that's great. But when you start paying a premium for that acquisition, you better have some high upside of what you're going to get out of it to make it better than organically just being good at executional marketing. Now, granted, marketing is a black art. It is not a science by any stretch of the imagination. But I think the people that we see that are great at scaling businesses and not having to use outside money. So this 100 company model I was telling you about, out of those 100 companies, 0 took outside investment. Almost all of those companies are debt free. They grew out of profitability. And I sit here and see all the data, and I get it. And you guys can get away with it. But here's the thing. Do you want to go to Vegas and with $100,000 that you borrowed on your home equity line and play the craps table?
I mean, it is the best odds game.
It is the best odds game, but I lost $300. I did this. I prepared. I went to Vegas on a conference and I practiced doing craps on an electronic device. I'm thinking, okay, I got this figured out. I lost $300 faster than I could say.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't have enough money to stay in the game, as you realize kind of how that game works. And that's essentially what a lot of times, yes, it's not that some people will get away with it, but you made a bet that is not as repeatable. And so here's the thing. I want to teach you guys how to improve your odds. Now, if you want to make a moonshot bet, go right for it. It's your money. It's your life. Do what you want to do. I can just tell you what the odds are. And they're not good. I mean, a lot of times in acquisitions, you find the proverbial skunk in the woodpile. And how's that working out for you? Yeah. And so there again, it's any of these techniques are not inherently good or bad. What you have to do, and like I said, I go back to Michael's comment, was so well stated. You look at these things as tools and opportunities. And the first thing is you evaluate the opportunity and you look at the potential of success. And then you look at how am I going to fund it? And I will tell you, you will be more judicious funding it with your own dollars than you are more reckless with other people's money that you borrowed through debt than you are with your own cash. Yeah. And it's exactly opposite of what your nature ought to be, but that's exactly how it works.
Greg, you just sold 2 more books, man.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think I'm going to get one too.
I see
I read it in
here.
2018.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you guys, our time, I think our official time is actually up. For me, it went super fast. I don't know, and I'm sorry if I didn't push things long enough. We did not get to all of the questions, and I saw a couple come in on the side. Are you guys up for staying a little bit longer? Should I not even ask that? Is that cool?
I can do about 10 more minutes.
I'm good.
Okay. Why don't we? And if you guys need to, I'm just gonna. How about this? Right now, I'm just gonna say thank you. I'll say my thank yous now. If you guys do need to drop off, please feel free to drop off. Okay. Perfect. So thank you guys all so much for participating. It was really. I think all of you, we really appreciate your valuable insights. And I think, like for me, having met people at the conferences previously, now I know like who to bug if I think I'm gonna go into debt again, or who to bug if I'm trying to hire a bunch of remote people and I don't know how to do it. So I, thanks so much. But yeah, whoever's up for a couple more questions, we'd really love it if you can say, Michael.
Yeah, I on question number 9, that was in the list that you sent. That is my journey. I would love to talk about that a little
Yes,
bit.
is that the developer to
Transitioning from developer to business owner. So.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people that could speak to that, and I think that's a really, really popular thing. I was trying to kind of like organically lead the conversation, but please go ahead. Yeah, do that, Michael.
No, so I started out, doing websites for fun back in the 90s, I think right after Al Gore invented the internet. And
thanks, Al.
Yeah, it was a weird thing. I remember when I told my family that I was going to leave my job at the school district to go start a company designing websites. They all looked at me with really fuzzy eyes, like, websites? What's that mean? And I said, no, people are really going to want these things in the future. I turned out to be an okay developer. I actually don't develop anymore. I've hired much smarter and better people than me. I was a much better business owner. But the one point I wanted to make as we grew the business from from nothing to where it is now and having all the staff was I had to realize, I wish if I could go back, I'd tell myself to like really evaluate my own weaknesses and hire for those weaknesses sooner than later. I was in the way so much of the business growth early on that we could have grown a lot faster if I would have just recognized that, hey, I'm not good at this and I'm not good at that and good at that. I need to find people that do those things and quit trying to do them and just get the heck out of the way and do the things that I'm good at.
Paul.
One thing I've reflected on is I think I actually hired people too early. So if I was like a one-person shop in 2003, this isn't meteoric or anything, but like I think I should have stayed one person for maybe 1 or 2 more years, because when I added 4 or 5, I just think the cash flow and maybe the library of clients just wasn't there yet. But I hired out of stress, like, oh, I'm stressed all the time, so I just need more humans to just balance out the stress. And I think I could have just been more profitable longer, so that when I did make that first, second, third hire, I would have been in a better position to do it.
Don't start a business 2 months after graduating college. Work for somebody for a couple of years.
Caroline, I saw you raise your hand.
I did this. I went from being one person to being more than one person because I was going to be out with a pregnancy. And I knew that I would have to downscale or upscale. And there was really the status quo was coming to an end and it had a date on it. And I had to move around that or, face it head on like a brick wall pretty much and just tell the people like, sorry, no services for 3 months, which is when they're paying what they're paying. You got to respect that. You got to respect that they want the services and that you can't just bow out whenever your body decides that it's time. So I had no choice but to either close gently or turn stuff way down or to bring on at least 1 or 2 people to help. And I brought on 1 or 2 people to help. And now I have 2 people to help.
That's awesome. That's when we started hiring too, was when it kind of gives you I have to get somebody in by this time.
It's a deadline.
Yeah, it's a deadline. Eric, I saw you raise your hand. Oh, are you muted? I think you're muted, Eric. Eric, are you muted?
I don't know what happened to his audio.
Can you say something, Eric?
I tell you what, why don't you refresh? I think Ari also raised his hand, so I'm going to let Ari go, and then Eric, if you maybe refresh or something. Oh, I just heard. Okay, Ari, go ahead.
Yeah, so So I came from, not from a development background, but from a copywriting background. And I think the journey is similar for anyone who's practicing their craft, right? So the way I always kind of think about it is, at this point, or at some point, someone's going to have to play multiple roles. If you decide to go down the path of entrepreneurship, you recognize that first you're the key player on the team, you're the captain of the team, and you're also the owner of the team, right? If you're now the owner of New England Patriots and you're sitting in the dressing room with the locker room with the players, and you're also the captain, you're wearing a lot of hats. And I think everyone has to kind of think about what are they best at. And I think what Michael was saying is that at some point he said, I don't want to be the key player any longer. I'm better off as being the captain. And I think that's the journey that, we have to think about. Am I going to be the owner of the team? Am I going to be the captain or the key player? And if there are developers who are out there who are just the best at what they do, then sometimes they may be better off not becoming a business owner, but staying in their lane. But others, who like myself, who felt like, okay, I might do better as a captain, then yeah, go for it. And I think it just comes down to recognizing your, risk profile and what your, how many sleepless nights you're able to put up with, and then, go for your dreams. So that's what it comes down to.
That sounds great. And Eric, yeah, I think we can hear you now because I don't see it being muted, but you went from being a developer to you don't even have development anymore.
Crazy.
Yeah. And I suspect I actually might have a slight delay, so I apologize if that is a little awkward. But I wanted to just briefly add that in the journey from developer to whatever you end up spending your time primarily doing, at any step of the way, there is someone who you probably are connected to who has been there. So I would just encourage anybody along this journey, wherever you are, look around you. Don't hesitate to reach out and just ask yourself as an example. Just send a Twitter direct message, an email, a text message, whatever's available, and just say, hey, I've got a couple of questions I was hoping I could run by you. The worst thing that can happen is you get ignored. Second worst thing is they say no. And then from there, you got some pretty good options. So just don't hesitate to reach out to people who you perceive to be farther along a journey than you might be.
Good advice.
Ty.
I was just going to say I'm kind of a designer, developer, jack of all trades kind of person. And I remember I had a very clear moment where I had to decide if I was going to still be a designer, essentially, for the company, or whether we were going to try to develop that capacity in a larger sense. And I had this kind of identity crisis around it because, both design and development are they're very kind of alluring and addictive, and they're very enjoyable for the people who do them. So for me, it was like taking away a part of my identity. And that was the biggest barrier, even more than any sort of like practical thing or business thing. It was this emotional attachment that I had to my identity as a designer. So one thing that I did at that time to help me kind of push through that was I started to do more just like random design on my own. So I was just like, all right, I'm just going to spend a couple hours on a Saturday making a logo for my podcast, or like I did like a rebrand for my family, and I made all this like collateral and posters and stuff that we have all over the place. So it's like, I think that's a tip that I might give people who are in that position is like, find a way, if it's that emotional attachment that's holding you back from making like the right choice about your future, to find ways to soften that blow for yourself a little bit by continuing to be involved. Even people who own, large technical businesses can still be involved in communities like this, and can still, kind of talk shop and have that same experience and be connected to the technology still. So it's not like it's not a death sentence for your technical side if you want to start a business.
All right. Awesome. Okay, so with that, we are how far over? 15 minutes over. So I think I think that we'll go ahead and wrap it up and say thank you. And next year, I'm going to plan this to be a 2-hour kind of workshop thing, because this is really great, and I think we could have gone on it. And I just learned so much from all of you guys, and I think, you know, I don't want to speak for you guys, but, you know, people can find you maybe in some of the lounges or something if they have any other questions. And I'll hang out until, you know, folks go. And virtual happy hour, 7 o'clock Eastern time. You guys come back to the lounges. We'd love to see you there. And I will tweet out everybody's Twitter handles. I saw that question in there. I'll tweet out a thank you to everybody. I'll do my, like, I'm horrible at social media, but the EE conference is the only thing I tweet about. So you'll see it on there. And we'll have the conference retweeted as well, so that you guys are, people can contact you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Lydia.
Thank you so much, you guys, for
Thank you so much.
participating.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you tomorrow.